Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started.
Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda Superb, best in next class. Co-powered by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist.
Many governments around the world have been panned for their response to this pandemic, for not taking the threat seriously, for not ramping up infrastructure in time, for not being transparent with the people about what was coming. But none have been accused of what Sri Lanka is, denying people the basic dignity in death. How do you conduct the last rites when the bodies remain potentially contagious? This question was raised in Colombo, and Sri Lanka then mandated one rule for all: cremation. Even if the victim is Muslim or Christian, even if they traditionally bury their dead in Sri Lanka, they must all be cremated if they've died of the Wuhan virus. This rule has been in place since April. Now it has triggered widespread anger. Why now? And how does the government justify its decision and its move? Is this science or politics? Tonight on Gravitas, we shall discuss. Also on the show, the biggest story from Africa: 300 school students in Nigeria have been abducted by the Boko Haram, a jihadist group that has made millions in ransom money over the years. Why has Abuja failed to control it? A new strain of the Wuhan virus is being reported in the UK and is being held responsible for spreading infections faster in at least 60 locations. Will the vaccine work against virus mutations? Weeks after America's most bitter and hotly contested election, Joe Biden's victory is officially confirmed, but top US government departments are being hacked during this transition. We'll tell you all about it. And Australians are picnicking in a sea of foam. We'll tell you why that may not be a very good idea. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
The United States has imposed sanctions on Turkey for buying the Russian missile defense system S-400. The Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has hit back, saying that neither sanctions from the United States nor the European Union would deter Turkey from defending its right. At least 42 Islamic State group fighters have been killed by Iraqi special forces during a major military operation in southern Mosul. The operation, dubbed Sweeping Torrent, was carried out under the direction of the Commander-in-Chief of the Iraqi Armed Forces. The Deputy Governor of Kabul, Mahbub-ullah Mohebi, has been killed in a bomb attack. Security officials said a sticky bomb was attached to his car by unknown assailants. No military group has made an immediate claim of responsibility for the blast. Reports say the U.S. Food and Drug Administration Department is expected to clear emergency use of Moderna vaccine by the end of the week. The FDA said there were no specific safety concerns identified and confirmed an overall efficacy of 94.1%. A sophisticated human trafficking operation worth millions of dollars involving Rohingya Muslims has been uncovered, in which members of the community traffic their own people. Registered fishing boats, satellite phones, supply vessels, and corrupt officials were some of the key facets of the operation. Facebook, Twitter and TikTok face fines of up to 10% of turnover if they fail to remove and limit the spread of illegal content under laws proposed by Britain. Tech platforms will have to do more to protect children and ensure their safety online. Pornhub deletes most of its content in the wake of backlash over illegal videos. The website has been criticized for its loose guidelines for content moderation that allows videos to be uploaded without verifying consent of the people in them, that in some cases even featured child sexual abuse. 11 elderly people with mobility issues have been killed after a fire erupted at a retirement home in the Russian region of Bashkortostan. Russia's investigative committee has said it has launched a criminal probe into possible negligence. South Korea's Lim Kim smashed a series of records to win the 75th edition of the oldest women's major, the US Open, in Houston. World number 94, Kim was playing her first tournament in America and started the delayed final round in a tie for 9th, 5 shots behind leader Hinako Shibuno. She had started with 3 birdies on the front 9, but lost the momentum with bogeys on the 11th and 12th holes. She was a distinct sight on the course, with her mask never slipping, and she closed out her round with 3 straight birdies to finish at 3 under, and became the 3rd Korean to win a major this year. Tokyo's governor Yuriko Koike has categorically stated the Olympics will not be cancelled under any circumstances, as doing so would impact the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing and 2024 Summer Games in Paris. The Games will begin a year later on July 23rd in 2021, but 63% of respondents polled by national broadcaster NHK either favor a second postponement or cancellation altogether. Japan is pressing ahead with preparations, and the iconic Tokyo Skytree Tower was lit up to mark 100 days to the recommencement of the Olympic torch relay.
Living with the Wuhan virus has been difficult. Dying with it, even more so. In Sri Lanka, pandemic deaths have triggered a massive controversy. The government insists on cremating all the dead, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, whatever be the religion. If you have died because of the Wuhan virus in Sri Lanka, you shall be cremated. That is the government's order. But Muslims and Christians bury their dead. They do not cremate. So government orders go against their religious beliefs. But why does Sri Lanka want to cremate everyone? Because the government apparently feels that bodies of Wuhan virus victims might contaminate the groundwater if they're buried. Is the fear legitimate? Why do other countries still bury their dead? What do global health agencies say about this? What do Sri Lankans say? Our cover story tonight tries to find all the answers. And we start from the beginning. This order has been in place since April this year. It is not new. The administration has been cremating all victims. So why is there outrage now? Because the latest victim was just 20 days old. 20 days. A newborn baby who died due to the Wuhan virus and was cremated despite the objections of his parents. He has become the face of this campaign. Baby Shaik is the youngest victim of the virus in Sri Lanka. Even before his family could process the devastating news of his death, the authorities were, quote-unquote, ready to hand over the baby's ashes to them. It's a very distressing story. At least 15 Muslims have been cremated in Sri Lanka. Their families say that the cremations were carried out against their will. There is anger against the government. Muslims in Sri Lanka are being denied a burial. What about Sri Lankan Muslims who die abroad? What's the government's policy for them? Colombo does not want their bodies to be flown back home. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has made a special request to the Maldives, a Muslim-majority neighbor. The Maldivian president's office has responded to the request. They are holding consultations to bury Sri Lankan Muslims in the Maldives. So they can be buried in the Maldives, but they must be cremated if they are in Sri Lanka. Why does the Lankan government insist on this? The order to cremate all came after influential Buddhist monks raised an alarm. They said burying Wuhan virus victims could contaminate groundwater in Sri Lanka. They said buried bodies could spread the virus. Is there any basis to this claim? None has been found in science. Activists have slammed the argument. Global health bodies have said victims can be buried or cremated. But the Lankan government has not paid heed to these voices. And earlier this month, it found support in the Supreme Court. Sri Lanka's highest court turned down all petitions against compulsory cremations. Emboldened by the Supreme Court's decision, the Sri Lankan government rejected demands from 19 Muslim families. Reports say they refused to claim the bodies because they wanted a burial and not a cremation. But the Sri Lankan Attorney General ordered the local authorities to go ahead with the cremations. The move has triggered public anger. Over the weekend, citizens reached the cremation centre and they tied white ribbons to the gates of the cemetery that houses the crematorium. They were all removed on Monday. The protest then moved online, with several citizens claiming that the Rajapaksas are using the pandemic to marginalize the Muslims of Sri Lanka. One user on Twitter has claimed that Muslims are being cremated without tests or a positive report. Now, we've not been able to independently verify this, but we can tell you the outrage against the government is quite visible. Sri Lanka largely contained the first wave of the Wuhan virus cases. But now there's a second wave, and the focus is back on the government's response to the pandemic. The Rajapaksas, known for ruthlessly crushing the civil war, are using the same military textbook to defeat the virus. Reports say officials from the military are being given prominence over experienced civil servants, even those who have a record in health services. Earlier this year, a report claimed that key decisions on the pandemic were communicated by Shavendra Silva, an army commander who is the head of Sri Lanka's National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 outbreak. Shavendra Silva was called the public face of the response. So here's the thing. While this pandemic needs a tough response and military precision in managing affairs, the enforced cremations without any scientific basis damage Colombo's record on the pandemic. There's no better way of putting it. This is the state targeting one community to appease politically influential monks. And Sri Lanka's story is shocking because even without government high-handedness, death in this pandemic has been exceptionally tragic. Let me ask you something. What is the one thing that humans most fear? It is dying alone. The virus from Wuhan has brought lonely deaths to more than 1 million people the world over without the solace of a final goodbye for loved ones. Here's a report.
"11 miles from Manhattan lies the largest mass grave in the United States. This is the Heart Island, the final resting place for unclaimed dead bodies in New York. The island made international headlines in April, when the city announced that unclaimed victims of the Wuhan virus will be buried here. By the end of October, more than 2,000 New Yorkers had been buried on Heart Island, more than double the numbers from last year. It's dreary business. There is no funeral service. Workers in hazmat outfits just bury the dead. Another cruel gift of the pandemic, the Wuhan virus has made grieving the loss of a loved one harder. With mass gatherings restricted in several parts of the globe, many end up grieving alone. In June, families in Brazil had only 10 minutes to say goodbye to their loved ones. Brazil has the world's second largest death toll in this pandemic. As of July, strict guidelines were in place for funerals. Social gatherings were banned. Open casket viewings were not allowed. In May, a cemetery in Sao Paulo was burying 60 bodies in a day, with families being given barely a few minutes to bid their loved ones goodbye.
They call us 5 by 5 to make 5 funerals in a row. We can't have a wake, we can't do anything. The body is transported here directly from the hospital. We can't even dress the deceased. We can't give him a proper burial.
Acho que o que me faz falta é poder abraçar ele What I miss is not being able to kiss him. Because I work in the health sector, I was afraid of catching something and passing it on to him, so I didn't kiss him anymore. We didn't touch each other. We kept our distance.
The Wuhan virus has affected burials and funerals too. In Egypt, families were stopped from carrying out the Islamic custom of bathing the body before the burial. In Mexico, wakes were denied to the deceased. And in India, large gatherings are banned. Many don't even get the solace of a final farewell. In Israel, some hospitals have built a glass booth for families to get a last glimpse of the deceased. Despite the restrictions, people have found new ways to show solidarity. Earlier this year in Ireland, Catholic parishioners lined up their cars on a road toward a cemetery. When an elderly resident died in Kerry, the vehicles stood 7 feet apart. And the parishioners paid their last respects from their cars. It has been almost a year since the pandemic began. Hospitals still remain inundated with patients. The death toll continues to rise, with the virus showing no signs of slowing down. The struggle to ensure dignity for the dead continues. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
What's happening in Sri Lanka is pure politics. It has nothing to do with science or, for that matter, healthcare. I want to quickly draw your attention to a document. This is by the World Health Organization, a guideline on safe management of Wuhan virus victims. And this is a guideline that is accepted by the whole world. The document reads, and I quote, "People who have died from COVID-19 can be buried or cremated according to local standards and family preferences. The belongings of the deceased person do not need to be burned or otherwise disposed of." In short, it is safe to bury Wuhan virus victims. Science does not say that burial poses a healthcare risk. But you know what? Majoritarian politics does. The pandemic is a perfect opportunity for the government in Colombo to play that politics and pander to Islamophobia. Here's a quick primer. You see, Sri Lanka is divided along ethnic and religious lines. The Sinhalese Buddhists form the majority. The Tamil Hindus and the Muslims are Lanka's minorities. Muslims make up for 10% of the population. Their lives have been thrown into a turmoil since the 2019 Easter bombings. The attack was carried out by Muslim groups. It killed 269 people. It also marginalized Lanka's Muslims. Buddhist nationalist groups led the ethnic tension. Groups like Bodu Balasena floated the idea that Sinhala Buddhists were under threat from overpopulating Muslims. It was with this backdrop that Sri Lanka entered the presidential election. Gotabaya Rajapaksa played heavily on his Sinhalese Buddhist credentials. He was elected to office in November 2019 with 52.25% of the vote, more than 50% of the vote. Sri Lanka's election and Rajapaksa's victory was seen as a shift towards majoritarian politics. And since coming to power, he has only proved his critics right. In September this year, Sri Lanka banned cow slaughter, but do you know what? Eating beef is still allowed. When the pandemic struck, a section of Sri Lanka blamed Muslims for the spread of the Wuhan virus. The country's Buddhist monks sold factless stories. They said burying Wuhan virus victims would contaminate groundwater and apparently spread the Wuhan virus. Gotabaya Rajapaksa played to Sinhala emotions. And in April, Sri Lanka made cremation mandatory for all Wuhan virus victims. The move was 100% political. This is what President Gotabaya Rajapaksa told a news channel in November. And I'm quoting, "It is no secret that the majority who voted for me then were Sinhalese. They rallied because they had legitimate fears that the Sinhala race, our religion, national resources and the heritage would be threatened with destruction in the face of various local and foreign forces and ideologies that support separatism, extremism and terrorism. The main appeal made by the people to me was protect the country, unquote. This is the president of Sri Lanka protecting his position more than his country. He is protecting his votes, and in doing so, he has the backing of the parliament and a green signal from the court. In doing so, he is also denying the minorities of Sri Lanka even the basic dignity in death. And now for the biggest story that we've been tracking in Africa, the school raid in Nigeria. For more than 3 days now, at least 300 students have been missing in the town of Kankara in northwest Nigeria. 300 innocent schoolboys. We've been reporting on how the attack has been seen as the handiwork of local bandits. Turns out it wasn't. The attackers belong to an outfit which has become synonymous with terror for the people of Nigeria, Boko Haram. Boko Haram has claimed responsibility for the abductions. Listen to this audio clip that they've released.
Wato kasina to insha Allah ta'ala dan addini ya daukaka dan kahurci wato yayi kasa ne muka yi wannan aikin saboda karatun boko ba karatun Allah da Annabi bane. Ba kuma abin Allah da Annabi ake karantarwa a ciki ba.
Boko Haram is a jihadist group, and this kidnapping is a major milestone for them. So far, Boko Haram has only been active in northeast Nigeria. They've been waging an insurgency. And now with the school raid, they have entered the northwestern part of the country. They have kidnapped 300 school students in the state of Katsina. This is the home state of the Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari. There is mounting pressure on Mr. Buhari to act now. The kidnapping has become a national crisis. The entire country is praying for the return of these students. Hashtag Bring Back Our Boys has been trending all day in Nigeria. The world is watching all of this. The United Nations chief has issued a statement. He has called for the immediate release of the abducted children. But back in the town of Kankara, there's only agony and tears for mothers of the kidnapped students. All they can do is hope for the safe return of their children. What I'm about to show you could be disturbing.
Inda gwamnatin nan mai adalci ce kamar yadda suke yi to tsani ga Allah su gaggauta kawo mana ƴaƴanmu domin wallahi da in ba su niyya ba suna da yanda za su yi su kwato mana ƴaƴanmu wallahi amma ba matsala saboda ba ƴaƴansu bane ba shi ya samu sun ba mu cikin bakin ciki da iyayenmu da kakannin yaran da ƴaƴansu da duka kowa da kowa yana cikin bakin ciki sun samu cikin halin haula ba mu bacci.
It's a heart-wrenching story, but why exactly has Boko Haram kidnapped these school kids? What does it hope to achieve? While we try to answer these questions, we also end up facing many more. Like what led to the formation of the Boko Haram? How many lives have been lost in this insurgency? And what circumstances have led to its exponential growth? We also came across some stunning figures like this one. In the last 10 years, Boko Haram has made more than $18 million in ransom money. Kidnapping is a business. It's a tool to inflict political violence in Nigeria. Why has Abuja failed to control it? Our next report has the answers.
Since emerging in 2002, the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria has developed into the world's most brutal of conflicts. At least 36,000 people have been killed and more than 2 million displaced. Self-educated preacher Muhammad Yusuf founded the group in the northeastern Borno state. He called upon Muslims to reject the state and regard Western science and modern literature as sinful. The conflict he started remains concentrated in the northeast. Most of Nigeria's Muslims live in the north, while Christians live mostly in the south. The Nigerian government is based in the strategically located Abuja. It is often accused of doing little to stop the insurgency. After Muhammad Yusuf's death in a 2009 uprising that killed 700 people, fiery preacher Abu Bakr Shekau emerged as a more extreme leader. Fighters rampaged through towns and villages. They seized territory to create a new caliphate and slaughtered people as they did so. The Nigerian government failed miserably to stop them. The West called the group the Nigerian Taliban, but it later acquired the name Boko Haram, which translates to Western education is a sin. In 2014, the group kidnapped 219 female students from the boarding school in Chibok. The fate of many of the girls remains unknown to this day. In 2015, Boko Haram declared allegiance to the Islamic State group. The same year, a multinational force of troops from Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon tried to defeat the group, but they failed. The cross-border attacks increased, more kidnappings followed. Then, in 2016, Boko Haram split into two main factions, one with Abu Bakr Shekau in charge, the other headed by Muhammad Yusuf's son, Abu Mus'ab al-Barnawi. Both factions have claimed allegiance to the Islamic State. Both have unleashed atrocities on the people of Nigeria. They are running a sophisticated kidnapping industry. According to a report, between 2011 and 2020, over $18 million had been paid in ransom for kidnappings that were mostly carried out by the Boko Haram insurgents. And with the onset of the pandemic, the pool of victims has expanded exponentially. Most kidnapping victims right now are poor villagers and students. The ransoms range from $1,000 to $150,000. The victims, whose families fail to pay ransoms, are mostly killed or forced to join the ranks of this outfit.
This is one of the first major attacks that is happening in this region, in the northwestern region, which Katsina State is just about 500 kilometers from Abuja, where I am, and that's the country's capital. So for the sect to come out to claim this responsibility for the attack, we're seeing more agitations growing, more concerns growing, because this is not the first time the sect has gone about this kind of massive abduction.
The abduction of 300 schoolboys is only the tip of the iceberg. Nigeria's kidnap problem is a knot that won't come undone easily. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
A new strain of the Wuhan virus has been identified in the UK. Experts say the new variant has a number of different mutations. It spreads faster. It has already infected more than 1,000 people. Does this mean that the mutated virus is more dangerous? What symptoms will an infected person show now? And what about vaccines? Will they still be effective against virus mutations? Our next report has the answers.
As we've always said here, this virus evolves and changes over time.
7 months into the pandemic and some 9,000 kilometers away from China, a new strain of the Wuhan virus has been identified. England says a new strain has infected at least 60 different localities. It is being associated with the faster spread of the virus.
This variant is growing faster than the existing variants. We've currently identified over 1,000 cases with this variant, predominantly in the south of England.
Viruses mutate all the time, and the Wuhan virus is no exception. Its new strain has a number of different mutations. Experts say the most troubling of them all is a deletion, or loss of 2 amino acids from the Wuhan virus spike protein. Researchers are now trying to determine whether the variant is linked to severity of the disease and whether it interferes with the diagnostics.
There's been a lot of analysis done over the last few days and to try and work out what this means.
This is not a first. New strains of the Wuhan virus were found in Denmark's minks and in Spain during the summer. The question is, what do the new strains mean for the vaccine?
All right, here we go.
What does it mean for vaccines? Will the shots be rendered useless?
None of these questions have been addressed yet, and we have no information to suggest that any of that is the case.
The Wuhan virus is said to have jumped into humans from animals around a year ago. Experts say since then the virus has been mutating at least twice a month. The approved vaccines are expected to produce a range of antibodies. A mutated virus may not be able to evade them all. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
46 days before Donald Trump leaves office, his administration has finally made good on months of threats to punish the government of Turkey. The United States has finally imposed sanctions on Turkey. What for? The official answer is this. Turkey bought the Russian S-400 missile defense system. Turkey is a NATO member, and this defense collaboration with Russia is unacceptable to America. But like always, there's more to the story.
The 16th of November, Istanbul. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his wife arrive in Turkey for a brief visit. The purpose of this visit is not revealed. No official meetings take place. Pompeo does not make any official statement either. The tensions are evident. The unusual nature of his visit raises eyebrows. The State Secretary does not say a word. He leaves for Washington without meeting any Turkish official. It has been nearly a month since this fraught visit, and the U.S. State Department has taken one of its biggest steps in recent history vis-à-vis Ankara. It has approved rare sanctions against Turkey, focused on the country's military procurement agency. With this decision, the U.S. has banned all export licenses and loan credits to Turkey's Presidency of Defense Industries and its head, Ismail Demir. The sanctions have been approved under a 2017 law known as CAATSA, Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. This act has been haunting Turkish-US relations for the last 3 years. It is now set to erode whatever little was left of the bilateral ties. The Turkish president is mighty upset.
It is upsetting that the sanctions rhetoric against our country in the United States and European Union has increased, and the processes have mobilized. In fact, Turkey expects the EU not to sanction it, but rather realize its promise of a full membership, that it has not done so for years.
The Russian foreign minister is calling it American arrogance.
As far as US sanctions against Turkey are concerned, it's yet more evidence of the arrogant attitude of the Americans towards international law. It is also a manifestation of the illegitimate, unilateral, and coercive measures that the US government has practiced for many decades all over the world.
In 2019, Turkey, one of America's NATO allies, took delivery of the $2.5 billion S-400 missile system from Russia. It defied warnings that such a deal was incompatible with NATO policies. It defied requests that the deal would let Russia improve its targeting of Western planes. Erdogan declared that Turkey was not a tribal state.
We took steps. We paid. But you did not give us our F-35s, and you won't give them. And you have threatened us. You told us to send the S-400s back to Russia. But we are not a tribal state. We are Turkey.
He has now changed his tone. Erdogan says he expects America to support its purchase for the prosperity of the region.
From our NATO ally, the United States, we expect support in our battle against terrorist organizations and forces that have plans for our region, not sanctions. We are never a country that chases after conflict or tensions with its neighbors or any other. We are fighting for the prosperity of our entire region and the entire world.
Trump once declared himself a big fan of Erdogan. But a lot of water has flown under the bridge since then, and acrimonious letters exchanged. Like this one, where Trump tells Erdogan to not be a fool, and that he does not want to be responsible for destroying the Turkish economy. Seems like Donald Trump has changed his mind on this one too, because the sanctions will hit an already rickety economic machine in Turkey. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
2020 has been a year of diplomatic victories for Israel. It has forged diplomatic ties with four Arab powers: Bahrain, the Sudan, the UAE, and more recently, Morocco. 2 days ago, Israel added another ally on its side, Bhutan. Bhutan has also established diplomatic ties with Israel now. What do these alliances mean for West Asia, and how can India and Israel leverage these new partnerships together? Can Israel keep the Abraham Accords intact with a change of guard in Washington, D.C.? To discuss all of this and more, we have with us on Gravitas Dr. Ron Malka, the Israeli ambassador to India. Dr. Malka, welcome to WION. 4 Arab countries have now normalized ties with Israel, and experts say that this is a new West Asia that is taking shape. What role does Israel see for itself in this new West Asia?
Well, I think that the involvements in West Asia are now are very good news, positive news for not only the Middle East, West Asia, but also to the whole world. First, because countries are getting now united and collaborate and, of course, contribute whatever they can bring, new technologies and innovation to the world. It also sends a message of peace and friendship between nations, which is very, very important, especially nowadays. And specifically to the Middle East, West Asia, it really sends a message, a clear message to the Palestinians that the world is not going to wait anymore. And not only the world, but the Muslim world, and more particularly the Arab world. Because it sends a message to the Palestinians that they have some unrealistic dreams, some fantasies that maybe there will be a total annihilation of Israel, and that will not exist, and then they will get whatever their fantasies show them. And a country like Iran is really supporting these dreams and fantasies. Hopefully they will come to ground and sit to negotiate with its neighbors, with Israel, and compromise and find solutions like other countries do. And this is a very strong message to West Asia and the specific conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians, telling the Palestinians that now we see you as those that are to blame for not having peace with Israel. Please, we are not going to wait anymore. Sit and compromise and find solution, because we want to see peace in all the region, peace and prosperity. This is what we are yearning to.
We'll come to the question of Palestine later. Let's look at what this relationship means for your partners elsewhere. How can India and Israel, for example, leverage these new relationships? Recently, the Indian Army Chief traveled to West Asia to forge a new defense partnership. You yourself have talked about a trilateral pact between India, Israel and the UAE. What would this agreement entail?
So India and Israel are key strategic partners, and we are focusing on innovation and technology. Emirates also a country that is focusing on innovation and technology. So bringing each other's comparative advantage to the table. We can bring so much added value to each other. So of course, also for India, the peace agreement between Israel and the Gulf countries is good news. Because now together we can work out many, many issues, challenges that are similar to all those countries, and we know that each one brings something to the table. We are not the same, so each one has his comparative advantage, his know-how, his experience, practices, and these technologies and solutions. We are strengthening each other. And this is so positive, of course, for each one that is coming to this friendship as a new member, as a new player with his advantages.
Right. This is also a period of uncertainty, a period of change, with Joe Biden set to replace Donald Trump at the White House and Israel going into its 4th general election in 2 years. How does Israel plan to navigate these variables?
I think that the Israeli diplomatic community has been always navigating in hard waters and in cracks and finding creative solutions and innovative solutions and ways to conduct our deeds. And so in this sense, it's not something that we didn't see or didn't experience. Of course, there are changes, and we know how to adapt, and adaptivity and flexibility and multi-optional thinking. These are the skills that we bring to the table. And of course, resilience, and also the ability to manage our affairs within those cracks that are there. So this is diplomacy, and this is how we do that. And as I said, we faced even bigger challenges in the past, so I'm quite sure that we are going to overcome also this time, this hard time.
Right. You also serve as the ambassador, Israel's ambassador to Sri Lanka. India puts a special emphasis on its relationship with the neighbors. At the same time, there are challenges as well. We have the border standoff with China, Chinese aggression in the Indian Ocean. What role do you see Israel playing in India's neighborhood?
First of all, I have trust that India knows how to conduct its affairs very well, very wisely, very gently, with, I think, the attitude of peace, but of course being strong and assertive. Israel is there as a key strategic partner of India, to share with India our experience, our practices, our technologies, our systems, because this is the values of friendship that we have. So understanding that and knowing that many challenges that India is now facing are challenges that we faced in the past, and we gave solutions and we managed, and we are willing to share our experience, our practices. I think this is what we can bring to this table, and India will know what it needs and how to use this experience and the technologies and the solutions that we share for its needs.
Recently, Bhutan has also established formal diplomatic ties with Israel. What can we expect from the Israel-Bhutan partnership?
Well, as the agreement with Bhutan brings another friend country to the table. Israel and Bhutan has been warm friends for many years. And of course, we shared with Bhutan many practices, especially in agriculture and water management and other areas that are in their concern. So whenever two friends of India are getting together, I think it's good news also, of course, for India. And in that sense, of course, we can collaborate together and see how things can be evolved in such a way that we can bring some contribution to each other.
Right, Dr. Malka, there's a lot more to talk about, but we're out of time. Thanks very much for joining us here on Gravitas.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's look at what's happening in the U.S. It is confirmed now Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. The U.S. Electoral College has confirmed Biden's victory. This marks the end of the voter fraud conspiracies and the many legal battles unleashed by Donald Trump. All doors for him to challenge the result are now shut. Let's begin by explaining how the Electoral College works. Each American state has a fixed number of electors. The number of electors is equivalent to the number of representatives it has in the Congress. For example, California has 55 electors because it has that many more representatives. Smaller states like Wyoming and the capital Washington, D.C. have only 3 electors. In each state, the candidate with the maximum votes wins all the electors. On Monday, all 538 electors in the Electoral College voted. 306 went with Joe Biden. 232 supported Donald Trump. The minimum votes needed to win were 270. So with 306, Joe Biden is well past that victory mark. The Electoral College has affirmed a Joe Biden presidency. Accepting the result, Biden appealed to Americans to turn the page on divisiveness, to unite and to heal.
You know, in this battle for the soul of America, democracy prevailed. We, the people, voted. Faith in our institutions held. The integrity of our elections remains intact. And now it's time to turn the page, as we've done throughout our history, to unite, to heal. As I said in this campaign, I will be president for all Americans. I'll work just as hard for those of you who didn't vote for me as I will for those who did. There's urgent work in front of us. Thank you all. May God bless you. And may God protect our troops and all those who stand watch over our democracy. Thank you.
Even senior Republicans have begun recognizing Joe Biden as the next president. The list includes Senator John Thune, the number 2 Republican in the Senate, Senator Roy Blunt, the number 4 Republican leader, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Senator Mike Rounds, John Cornyn, Chuck Grassley, Rob Portman, even Lindsey Graham, a long-time Trump loyalist. All of them want Donald Trump to concede. Some others in the Trump administration have started abandoning the sinking ship, like Attorney General William Barr. In a letter to the president, Mr. Barr has said that he would leave his post on the 23rd of December. Remember, William Barr has constantly opposed Donald Trump's claims that the elections were rigged. Trump went public with his disdain against his administration's top lawyer for rejecting his claims. In fact, he had grown so frustrated with William Barr that he even considered firing him. Well, he can't fire him now because William Barr has quit himself. In other news, hackers believed to be working for Russia have apparently been monitoring internal email traffic at the U.S. Treasury and Commerce Departments. This is very serious. The hack is so serious, in fact, that it led to a National Security Council meeting at the White House on Saturday. The first reports emerged on Sunday. The full extent of the damage is not clear yet. The prime suspect, we are told, is Russia, and it has denied any involvement. We'll be tracking all the developments for you on this front very closely. For the moment, let's turn to another continent, Australia. Australia's cyclone season has whipped up a surprise. Beaches along the famous Gold Coast are covered in foam. It's a rare phenomenon, but not really unheard of. As locals got wind of the news, they descended on the beaches in large numbers. What followed was a full-scale foam party. Take a look.
Here's something you don't see every day. A frothing beach. It was a pleasant surprise for residents in Australia's east coast. Dozens of families soon arrived with their kids. The whole thing turned into a huge party.
It was very fun.
I've never seen anything like this before.
The east coast is going through a spell of extreme weather. Heavy rains, flash floods, and high-speed winds. Clearly, there's a connection between the foam and these cyclonic conditions. What exactly is that connection? Well, let the experts explain.
Seafoam is largely protein that's coming from degrading organic matter in the oceans. Of course, we know when we, stir soap up in a basin of water, it foams up, and that's exactly what happens when these degrading organisms get stirred up by the wind and the waves, and we get sea foam.
Sea foam isn't particularly dangerous to humans, but beach parties are still not a good idea. The weather hasn't cleared over the east coast. Heavy rains are expected until early Wednesday, along with isolated thunderstorms. Thousands of locals are on standby for evacuation. In the Gold Coast, some of the most famous beaches aren't there anymore. The rising sea has swallowed them. All of these weather events in Australia are linked to the La Nina phenomenon. It brings with it heavy rains and tropical cyclones. Extreme weather has become the norm down under. Last year was forest fire season. This year, it's cyclone season. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
With that, it's a wrap. We're leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.